You know, um, you probably didn't wake up today intending to make your colleagues respect you less.
Right, nobody ever does.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But according to the notes you sent us for this custom deep dive, well, your brain's natural biological desire to just save a little bit of energy might actually be actively dismantling your reputation.
It's a slightly terrifying thought when you phrase it that way.
I know, right?
But looking at the excerpts you provided, it's just remarkably accurate. And you'll notice I've set my virtual backdrop today to a sprawling, meticulously designed cityscape.
Oh, yeah, I was looking at that. It looks amazing.
Thanks. It's not just for aesthetics, though. It's actually the perfect visual anchor for the concepts we are about to unpack.
Okay, let's unpack this because, well, the stack of notes you gave us pulls from two really fascinating sources.
They really are.
We're looking at the architecture of personal respect, the hidden reason people don't respect you, alongside this other piece, the mechanisms of human inertia, the psychology of laziness, explained simply.
Right, so two very different ideas on the surface.
Yeah, exactly. On the surface, you've got this highly social concept respect mashed up with a deeply internal, almost, shameful concept like laziness. So our mission today is to figure out the specific physics of how these two forces collide in your everyday life.
And we aren't just going to define the terms. I mean, we need to really look under the hood.
Definitely.
If we understand the actual mechanics of why our brains choose the path of least resistance and how other people biologically interpret that choice, we can entirely change how you navigate your workplace and your relationships.
I love that. I want to dive right into the phrasing from your first source, framing respect as an architecture.
It's a very specific word choice.
It is, because I think a lot of us subconsciously operate under the assumption that respect is like an aura.
Yes, like an invisible field.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You either have main character energy or you don't. You walk into a room and people just instinctively defer to you because of some innate gravitas you were born with.
Which is, frankly, a very convenient myth.
How so?
Well, if respect is just an aura you are simply born with, then you aren't responsible when you don't have it.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a good point.
But framing it as an architecture completely dismantles that myth. An architecture requires blueprints. It requires a solid foundation. You have to actively build it, interaction by interaction.
And crucially, like any building, it requires continuous active maintenance.
Constant maintenance.
Right. Like if you own a house and you just stop maintaining it, it doesn't matter if it was a multi-million-dollar mansion on the day you bought it. The roof will eventually cave in.
And that architectural reality leads us into the most important concept from this first text. What's fascinating here is the subtitle, "The Hidden Reason People Don't Respect You."
Yeah, the word hidden is doing a lot of heavy lifting there.
It really is. It implies a blind spot.
Right.
When we feel a sudden lack of respect from our peers, we usually look around for, well, a massive earthquake.
Right. We look for a blown presentation or a huge argument, some undeniable catastrophic failure.
But the text is arguing that it's not an earthquake.
Far from it, right?
Exactly. It's water damage. It's termites. The lack of respect stems from subtle, unseen structural decay.
Just slow degradation over time.
Yes, the slow degradation of the materials. It's the small, repeated instances where you say, dodge a slightly uncomfortable conversation, or where you let a standard slip just a fraction of an inch because you were tired.
Okay, I have to push back on this a little, or at least, play devil's advocate.
Go for it.
If respect is an architecture and it's a building that I built and I am living inside it, could the hidden reason we lose respect simply be that we stop putting in the structural work? Which leads us directly into our second source.
Right, the mechanisms of inertia.
Exactly. Because if water is leaking through my ceiling, I'm going to notice it. Why do these micro cracks stay hidden?
Because of a very well-documented cognitive blind spot, we judge other people by their actions, but we judge ourselves by our intentions.
Oh man, that is entirely true.
Right. If you see a colleague show up to a meeting unprepared, you judge the action. You think, they are sloppy.
They didn't do the work.
Exactly. But if you show up unprepared, you judge your intention. You meant to read the brief, but you were overwhelmed with other tasks. Or your kid was sick, you had a headache.
You excuse it.
You completely excuse the lack of maintenance because you know how tired you were. You don't see the water damage, you just see a homeowner who deserves a break.
But gravity doesn't care if the homeowner is tired.
No, it does not.
The building decays regardless. Which brings up the obvious question, right? If we know our personal architecture requires constant energy to maintain, why is our default state to just stop? Why do we let the water damage happen?
And that question bridges us directly into the second half of your notes.
The human inertia piece.
Yes.
Oh,
We stop putting in the effort because of the mechanisms of human inertia. The text takes a fundamental law of physics. An object at rest stays at rest and basically maps it onto human psychology to explain laziness.
it's the stalled car analogy.
That's a great way to look at it.
Right. Anyone who has ever had to push a stalled car in neutral knows this feeling in their bones. You lean your shoulder into the trunk, you push with absolutely everything you have, and your legs are screaming just to get that 2-ton block of metal to roll a single inch.
The initial resistance is massive.
The upfront energy cost is astronomical. But once the car is rolling down a slight incline, you can practically keep it moving with one hand. The mechanism of laziness is just that initial resistance. It's the stalled car.
I really like that analogy, but we need to look at why the brain acts like a stalled car.
Okay, lay it on me.
Evolutionary biology plays a massive role here. For the vast majority of human history, calories were scarce. So the human brain evolved to be an incredibly ruthless energy accountant.
A ruthless energy accountant. I like that.
It constantly weighs the caloric cost of an action against the immediate survival benefits.
So the brain is essentially sitting there saying, we are currently on the couch, we are safe, we are burning minimal calories. Why on earth would we expend energy to draft a difficult email?
Yes, and taking that a step further, the brain doesn't just calculate physical calories, it calculates cognitive load.
Like mental effort.
Exactly. Initiating a new action, especially one that involves social risk, like setting a boundary or admitting a mistake, spikes the activity in the amygdala.
It registers as a threat.
It registers as a huge threat. The brain perceives the cognitive effort required to overcome that social friction as a massive expenditure of resources. It literally feels like trying to push a 2-ton car.
Wow. So the text is reframing laziness, not as a moral failing, but as a biological feature.
It's a mechanism. Society tells us laziness is a character flaw, a sign of weakness.
Right, like you're just a bad worker.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, if you look at it neurologically, human inertia is just your brain successfully executing its primary directive, which is to conserve energy until absolutely necessary.
I see where you're going, but I have to admit, this feels a bit like a trap. Well, if inertia is just a universal biological mechanism, isn't that just a really convenient, scientifically backed excuse to be a terrible colleague? Like, sorry I didn't send that report, my brain's energy accountant said no.
That's a fair concern, definitely. But understanding the mechanism is not an exculpation, it's a diagnostic tool.
Okay, explain that.
If you believe laziness is a moral failure, you respond to it with guilt and shame. And here is the cruel irony. Processing guilt and shame requires a massive amount of cognitive energy.
Oh, you just drained the battery even more.
You end up draining your battery even further, making it even harder to take action.
You're just sitting inside the stalled car, crying about the fact that the car is stalled, which obviously doesn't get the car moving.
Precisely. But if you view it objectively as a mechanism of human inertia, you remove the guilt.
You can just acknowledge it.
Right. You can acknowledge, I am an object at rest. My brain is trying to save calories. Once you strip the moral judgment away, you can focus purely on hacking the mechanics of generating that initial burst of energy.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because if we synthesize your notes, we hit a really powerful conclusion.
Let's hear it.
The hidden reason you are losing respect is fundamentally driven by your brain's biological mandate to remain at rest.
The water damage to your architecture is caused by your own human inertia.
Yes, but let's dig into the how. How exactly do colleagues detect this?
That's the million-dollar question.
Because if I'm sitting at my desk and I experience a moment of internal inertia, say, I decide not to speak up and correct a minor error in a project because I just don't have the energy for the debate that is an internal, invisible feeling.
Right, it's inside your head.
So how does the external world translate my private desire to save calories into a loss of respect?
We have to look at the evolutionary roots of social signaling.
Okay.
Humans are obligate social animals. We survive by functioning as a cohesive tribe. Because of that, our brains are hardwired to constantly monitor the energy output of the people around us.
We're looking for weak links.
Exactly. In an ancestral environment, if a member of the tribe was constantly exhibiting low-energy behavior, if they weren't pulling their weight on the hunt or they were falling asleep on watch, that wasn't just annoying.
It was deadly.
It was an existential threat to the group. We are biologically programmed to interpret a lack of action or a cessation of maintenance as a sign of unreliability.
So when I succumb to inertia at the office, my colleagues' brains aren't rationalizing, oh, they're just experiencing a natural psychological state of caloric conservation.
Not at all.
Their tribal wiring is flashing a red warning light.
They interpret the biological energy-saving mode as a social threat. It registers as, this person is not reinforcing the walls of the shelter, they are unsafe to rely on. And in the modern world, we call that feeling a loss of respect.
That makes so much sense, especially when you look at the specific micro cracks in a workplace.
Like, oh,
Well, it's the 48-hour delay in answering a slightly complicated email. You read the email, you realize it requires cognitive load to formulate a response, so your inertia kicks in, and you mark it as unread to deal with later.
or it's using passive, non-committal language in a meeting because taking a firm stance requires the energy to defend it.
Right. You just nod and say, yeah, we should probably look into that. It takes 0 calories to say that.
But your colleagues subconsciously pick up on that low energy signal.
They see the termite damage.
Yes. They read it as a lack of conviction, a lack of leadership.
Wow. The disconnect between our internal physics and our external architecture is just profound.
It really is.
We forgive our own lack of maintenance because we intimately feel the heavy friction of the stalled car. But others don't feel our friction. They only see the leaning building.
They just see the results.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Because the point of diving into your notes isn't to leave you terrified that every time you feel tired, you're destroying your career.
No, definitely not. The goal is to give you a functional framework.
Exactly. It's about building an early warning system based on these mechanics.
Yeah.
By recognizing inertia as a predictable mechanical state, you can catch the car while it's in neutral before it rolls backward.
You can intervene.
Right. The next time you're sitting at your desk and you feel that heavy, lethargic resistance to doing something you know you should do, sending the hard email, holding the standard, doing the maintenance, you can label it.
You step outside of the feeling. You say, this isn't me being a fundamentally lazy person. This is just my anterior mid-cingulate cortex trying to conserve calories. I am experiencing inertia.
And just by labeling it objectively, you bypass the shame spiral entirely.
Which saves energy.
Exactly. You conserve the mental energy you would have wasted on guilt, and you apply it directly to giving the car that first big push. You force the motion because you recognize the friction trying to stop you.
But applying this framework outwardly might be even more transformative.
Oh, I like where this is going.
This raises an important question for you to consider in your own interactions. How often are you misinterpreting someone else's natural human inertia as a deliberate, personal sign of disrespect toward you?
Oh, wow. That's a fascinating flip.
Think about the tribal signaling we just discussed. If someone is slow to respond to your message, or they drop the ball on a minor collaborative task, our immediate ego-driven response is often, they don't respect my time, they are deliberately insulting me.
We take the water damage personally.
We do. But if we apply the unified theory we've built from these sources, we might realize that their inaction has absolutely nothing to do with their assessment of your worth.
Right.
They aren't trying to tear down your building. They're just trapped inside their own stalled car.
They're battling their own caloric conservation mechanisms.
Precisely. Their lack of action is a symptom of their own internal inertia, not a targeted attack on you.
That's such a relief to realize.
Understanding that laziness is simply a biological mechanism allows you to approach those workplace frustrations with curiosity rather than immediate defensiveness. You can pause and ask, are they actually disrespecting me, or are they just stuck at rest?
It creates a buffer between the stimulus and your reaction. It protects your own peace of mind.
Exactly.
You don't have to excuse their behavior. I mean, you can still demand they meet the standard, but you don't have to internalize it as a personal attack.
It allows you to address the structural issue with them without the emotional baggage of feeling slighted.
All right, let's quickly recap the incredible journey we just took through the sources you provided.
It's been quite the ride.
It really has. We started by dismantling the myth of the respect aura, replacing it with the reality of an architecture, a structure that demands intentional, continuous energy to prevent hidden decay like water damage or termites.
We then looked at the biology of laziness, reframing it away from a moral failing and into the psychological mechanism of human inertia, the brain's natural evolutionary desire to remain at rest to conserve calories and cognitive load.
And we discovered how those two forces collide. Unchecked inertia is the silent foundation killer.
It is.
Because maintenance requires energy. Our natural inclination toward inertia causes us to pause the upkeep of our architecture. We rationalize it internally, but our colleagues, hardwired by evolution to detect low-energy behavior as a tribal threat, perceive those micro cracks as a lack of reliability, which translates into a loss of respect.
It's a constant battle against our own
It
physics.
really is. But before we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with one final thought.
Something to chew on.
Yeah, something that builds on your notes but pushes the boundaries of what we've discussed today.
I've been thinking about the absolute necessity of that caloric conservation.
Yep.
If human inertia is a natural mechanical state designed specifically to protect our resources, then perhaps we shouldn't view it entirely as the enemy of our architecture.
Interesting.
Is it possible that a strategic, intentional amount of laziness is actually required to give us the energy needed to build our architecture of respect over the long term?
Wait, planned inertia. You're saying laziness could be a building material.
Think about it. If you are constantly forcing motion, constantly pushing the car, constantly fighting the brain's desire to rest, you burn out the engine.
Right.
And a burned out architect cannot build or maintain a stable structure. We've talked about unchecked inertia being the termite damage, but can leaning into planned inertia, actively choosing when to be an object at rest without guilt, actually allow you to hoard the specific calories you need to reinforce the foundation when it matters most?
That is a phenomenal question to walk away with. Can you strategically use the biology of laziness to actually create a more sustainable, long-lasting respect?
Finding the balance between the push and the rest.
It changes the entire paradigm of how we manage our own energy.
It really does.
Well, thank you so much for sharing these incredibly potent notes with us. It's been an absolute privilege to unpack the physics and biology of these concepts for you.
It was a pleasure.
It just goes to show that the real joy of learning isn't just reading a text. It's connecting the unexpected dots to figure out how we actually operate. Until next time, remember to keep an eye on your own skyline and be mindful of the structures you are building or resting from every single day.